Right now it is 11:43 a.m. Tuesday, December 10th, 2024. I guess welcome back or whatever. This is me reading The Constant Rabbit, a novel by Jasper Fforde. I will make sure to post the other chapters in the description box for anybody who wants to go back and listen. This is me reading for the first time along with you guys. So, voices for characters are undecided until way farther down the line. So there will be different voices for every person, and as far as narration goes, it's going to be done in my accent, an American accent, even though I do the voices in a British one, because this is written by someone who lives in Wales. I'm not sure if he's from Wales or just lives in it, but regardless, thank you all, and subscribe, like, comment, all that fun stuff. All right, and here we go. This is chapter 3. Mother of pearl. This is chapter 3, I believe, of Constant Rabbit, Spotters and Spotting. So, let me see, let me get comfortable. Here we go, this is nice. Alright, so, rabbits always had trouble differentiating between humans. Hair color, skin color, clothes, gait, jewelry, and voice all helped, but a lot of it was guesswork. In tests, 82% of rabbits couldn't tell the difference between Brian Blessed and a gorilla if dressed in similar clothes. Individual rabbit identification had been an issue right from the start. Fingerprints didn't work as their paw pads were hard and leathery, and DNA matching was pretty much useless as the rabbit gene pool was deplorably shallow. Mature bucks who had been in several pistol duels would be recognized by the unique pattern of bullet holes in their ears, like an IBM punch card, as the joke went. But for the most part, juveniles, undueled bucks, and females looked pretty much identical. Any rabbit of wild or lab stock who was detained by the police or compliance task force required a no mingling protocol, as once they got mixed up, it was impossible to say which was which. But crucially, not all human eyes were blind to the complexities of human physiognomy? I'll see. Whatever. Toby and myself and others, how many it was never quite ascertained, possessed a gene anomaly that allowed us to differentiate between rabbits almost as well as rabbits themselves. As you've probably guessed by now, Toby and I weren't lowly accountants with Rapcot. We were a fundamental part of the task force machinery. We were officially titled Rabbit Identification Operatives, but internally at Rapcot we were literally known as Spotters. Oddly, the skill was often discovered late. I only realized I had the talent when I noticed that the rabbit playing opposite Patrick Stewart in Waiting for Godot was the same one I'd seen playing buttons to Les Dennis's Widow Twanky in 1982. Then recalling an online advertising company that compared dazzling career opportunities for anyone who could tell rabbits apart. I contacted the Rabbit Compliance Task Force, passed their rabbit comparison test, and followed a rigorous background check to ensure I had no unhealthy, positive attitude toward rabbits. My career changed from post office local sorting office manager, parcels, to Rapcot spotter within a fortnight. To be honest, I didn't really want a job in rabbit compliance, as I'd never been leporophobic, but was swayed by the good pay and final salary pension options. Most of all, the work had job security. I could spot rabbits for as long as rabbits needed spotting, which, as far as anyone could tell, was, well, forever. So for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, Toby and I compared pictures of rabbits who, for one reason or another, work, driving license, detention, marriage, death insurance claim, movement, prosecution, intelligence gathering, required confirmation of identity. For the most part, it was a fairly routine, as rabbits either knew we were watching, so didn't trouble to swap identities, or were inherently honest. But occasionally, we came across a rabbit who claimed to be a rabbit they weren't. Spotter slang dubbed them a Miffy. I logged in and started to work. The target and source pictures coming up in pairs on my screen. I allocated a percentage likelihood they were the same rabbit. 100% for a certain match. 0% for a certain non-match, and everything in between. I was quite good at it. In testing, I could spot a Miffy with 92% accuracy, up from 66% when I started. But it wasn't an exact science. Any rabbit that got less than 75% was referred to other spotters, and the scores aggregated using an algorithm to decide identity compliance. Subscript for that was the algorithm was occasionally tweaked depending on whether arrest and conviction targets were being met. Right? There you go. There you go, said Wiesel, who had returned with the teas. Keep a close eye on the screen, lads. There's been a lot of background chatter on Niffer, and while we've no idea what's being said, the increased traffic might suggest something is going on, so remain vigilant. We acknowledged the intel and the teas, then resumed our work, which, while seemingly easy, wasn't totally straightforward. Of the 18 rabbits elevated to humanness at the event, there were 3 distinct subgroups: wildstock, labstock, and petstock. Petstock were the simplest to identify, and with their varied markings, easy enough for even a layperson. The brown furred generic wildstock variety were much harder, and labstock harder still, as they were always white with red eyes. Comparing the capillaries in the labstock's ears was a pet project of mine, and had won me the Task Force Adequate Conduct Award 7 years previously, with a rare word of encouragement from the senior group leader. Despite the benefits, ear capillary identification had one major drawback. The subject usually needed a bright light behind them, which they almost never had. Shit, said Toby, echoing my thoughts. These labstocks are a bitch to tell apart. We continued working, and for the next hour there was nothing but positive IDs, then a few around the 50% mark. At a little after 11:30, I had my first Miffy of the day. Bingo, I said, as I stared at 2 pictures that were almost certainly not the same rabbit. There's a pet stock claiming to be one Randolph de Blackberry up in Berwick. Oh, sorry. My mistake. There's a pet stock claiming to be one Randolph de Blackberry up in Berwick. There had been 3 pet stock rabbits anthropomorphized at the event. House pets named Hercules, Blackberry, and Buttercup. Only the last 2 still had clear and uninterrupted bloodlines. The von Hercule family died out during the Great Petstock Dynastic Exchange of Discourtesies of 1980 to 88. And although several hundred carried the family's noble black fur, either wholly or in part, none carried the name. So for that whole dynamic exchange little thing at the bottom, the closest thing to a war amongst rabbits. The high point of the hostilities was Anton von Hercule's 14-hour less than polite rant in July 1987, which was met by a barrage of sarcasm that is still talked about today, usually in hushed tones. There had been 3 pet stock rabbits and I already passed that part. Oops. The de Blackberries won the struggle for aristocratic dominance, but it didn't make them any more popular. Most pet stocks were greeted with suspicion by the wild and lapstock members of the rabbit community. Too cozy with humans in the past, it was said. The all-white McButtercups, for their part, generally kept themselves to themselves the way they liked it. I gave the Miffy a 4%, and Fleming asked Toby whether he concurred, which he did. So Fleming signed the warrant, and Wiesel picked up the phone to coordinate the arrest of the rabbit on charges of identity fraud. Wiesel had done this before many times on my eye testimony, so the consequences of the unseen arrest and its aftermath were no longer something I worried too much about. The first month maybe, but not anymore. Rabbits can be criminals too. The excitement over, Fleming returned to her office, and Wiesel busied himself with the paperwork, of which there was a lot. I took a break, and then, out of attempts and curiosity regarding Connie rather than because of Victor Millet's pleas, looked up Clifford Rabbit on the Rabcot database. There were 2,000 of them. So I narrowed it down to those off colony and living in Herefordshire. This threw up 3 hits. One who was single, another who was currently doing time for insider training on collateralized carrot obligations, and one who lived in a temporary address for legal off-colony rabbits in Leominster. So for the carrot obligations thing, your guess is as good as mine on this one. Okay. I discovered this last rabbit had been married almost exactly a year, and there she was. Constance Grace Iolanthe Rabbit. Sorry. Constance Grace Iolanthe Rabbit. And I double-checked to make sure it was her by accessing her mugshot among the rabbit employment database. So for Constance, it says, rabbits were quite big into Gilbert and Sullivan operas, despite not having good singing voices. Few, if any, would even attempt the Mikado. Reading further, I learned that she was 2 years older than me, and second generation from the event. She was a respectable 8 short of the rabbit's 10-child policy, and was twice widowed, which was not unusual. The buck rabbit's propensity for dueling prior to breeding season could often have fatal results. "What you got there?" asked Wiesel, looking over from his desk. I explained that a rabbit had turned up in our village, and I wanted to know who she was. "Local village?" he asked. "Muke Hemlock." He grunted. "Multi-speciesism never worked. Different agendas, you see. It's not leperophobic to say they dislike integration. It's a fact. Does she have any previous you can use to move her on?" "She's not a resident in the village," I said. Then, to add plausibility to the data search, I added, "I was just making sure that she wasn't, on a res." "Very wise. Res is, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. R-E-C-C-E. "Very wise," said Wiesel, nodding in agreement. "One can never be too careful as far as rabbits are concerned." He looked at his watch. "Time for the briefing, Knox. Toby, you've got 2 hours overtime tonight to make up for Peter's absence." "No problem," said Toby happily, as the Guild of Spotters had negotiated double-time overtime with generous no-supper break penalties. "Fleming said you weren't keen on going on operations." Fleming said you weren't keen on going on operations," said Wiesel as we walked down the stairs toward the briefing room, "and even got a bogus note from medical. Any particular reason?" Wiesel, like Fleming, spoke his mind. I was on ops the night Dylan Rabbit was misidentified," I said, attempting to gain some sort of sympathy. 2 years ago. The senior group leader's last operation before promotion. The whole Dylan Rabbit episode was unfortunate. Sorry, let me rephrase that. The whole Dylan Rabbit episode was unfortunate, said Wiesel thoughtfully. I think meaning from a PR point of view and not from Dylan's point of view, as he wound up jugged. But to keep a high collateral level of efficiency and compliance, there has to be a small amount of collateral damage. It's inevitable. Besides, Dylan Rabbit was probably guilty of something, or would be given time. The papers had a field day, I said. No, said Wiesel. The smug lefty and headlights had a field day. So bottom for that, it's the most popular and politically active daily newspaper for rabbits. There is no online edition, and copies are banned off Colony, owing to the ink falling short of industry standards. The others barely covered it. Besides, you weren't lead spotter. None of it came back to you. This was true. I'd been there on the sidelines only to verify the ID. The fallout over Dylan Rabbit was at least big enough to have Smethwick answer questions in Parliament and required Rabcot to seriously overhaul and thoroughly review their identification criteria. This reached us as a single memo urging us to show a bit more caution for a few months over identification. The thing was, I knew we'd got the wrong rabbit during the hard traffic stop and said so, but I'd been overruled. Not just by the senior spotter on duty who had retired once the mistake was made public, but by the senior group leader who threatened to punch my, this is actually censored, to punch my effing lights out if I didn't concur with the identification. And I did. Identification is always a thorny problem, said Wiesel, opening the door to the briefing room. And while the Rabbit Support Agency, Grand Council of Conies, and the rest of the woolly liberal protest groups refuse to countenance RFI chipping or discreetly tattooed barcodes on the ears, we have to rely on spotters who are only human and can and do make mistakes. Besides, he added, if the perfidious bun didn't pull a Miffy every now and again, none of this would happen. They've only themselves to blame. Fleming was already there when we walked into the room. She was chatting amiably to 5 compliance officers. I knew them all by sight, but only 3 by name. Spotters regarded Spotters regarded compliance officers as gung-ho thugs with only a badge and a union-appointed lawyer to separate them from two legs good, and CEOs regarded spotters as overpaid milksops who had lucked out. They all introduced themselves to me at Weisel's behest, and they remained cordial, as did I, although I could see they were all deeply suspicious of my inclusion on the team. It wasn't just the Fallen Arches exemption that had kept me off ops. If you're going to be part of a politically motivated team, you need a common goal, a common agreement, an understanding. Our new intelligence officer was already there, but wasn't like any other intel officer we'd had, either permanent or loaned. This one was a rabbit. Oh, that's a short chapter. Okay. So that was the third chapter, Spotters and Spotting. I guess just a little bit of world building and just pre-stuff before they go on their little op. But yeah, next chapter will be Fudds and Flopsies, and I look forward to it. I hope y'all enjoyed that chapter. I know I did. I'm enjoying this book a whole lot. I know it's only been 3 chapters, but you know, it's a good time. Again, I'm not doing this for money. I'm not doing this for an assignment. I'm doing this because, I don't know, I just want to. So, hoping that y'all are enjoying yourselves. All right. Thanks, everybody.